I'm not muted. Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 222. To give people a bit of a chance to join the stream and also hopefully for one or two more guests to join us, I am going to play us a bit of a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace, fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heed and folly, bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come thou to search your manhood through all the thankless years. No age would give what wisdom the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all the thankless years.
And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard. Do go and check out his really good YouTube music channel. Good evening to my guests this evening, Mitch, Adaman, and AI. How are you going, gents?
Yeah, it's good to be here.
All good.
You can always be relied on that one, Mitch. Guys, I'd just like to say, if you haven't already seen it, do go and watch our Wednesday history stream, which I thought was pretty good. It was mainly the work of Aaron Hook and Mitch. And it was about Ireland Ulster and Home Rule, and I think it was a pretty good stream. So do go and check that out. And also, I'd have to congratulate AI because AI managed to do a stream on the Marquis de Sade's book, 120 Days of Sodom, I think. And he managed to do it reasonably successfully, I have to say, which is more than I would have been able to do. So well done, AI. Needless to say, this was AI didn't want particularly to do that stream, but it was kind of a self bet about his subscribers. Sorry, AI.
Yeah, it was a self bet, and I only got through the section I got through yesterday was introducing the characters. Marquis de Sade refers to them as like the three heroes. I refuse to refer to them as the three heroes in any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they are the most despicable.
Anti-heroes. They're vile. They're not even anti-heroes. I mean, it's a vile
They're not
book.
anti-heroes. No. I mean, they're the most despicable people on the planet, and in that book, the characters are the most despicable ones, especially the president, the politician in the pack. There is is an absolute monster, just a pure monster, and yeah, I mean, it's an abhorrent book, and you know. One of the good things Napoleon did, and Napoleon didn't do many good things at all, but one of them was locking up Marquis de Sade, which he did. Quite frankly, I did, because I promised that I'd do a live reading. But I didn't say I'd complete the book. I might do a bit more, but I don't know. It's rough. It's rough.
I thought you did pretty well. I listened to it today while I was doing other things, and well, I say today, yesterday actually, my time. But it's a really difficult book. It's not even it's not in the least bit erotic. It's just vile. It's really horrible.
Yeah.
Although I will say this: the Marquis de Sade was actually one of the revolutionary judges during the French Revolution, and he was by no means the worst one. But that probably tells you more about French revolutionary judges than it does about the Marquis de Sade. So
Yeah. I mean, thank God. I say good portions of his. He wanted to do a sequel. There was like there's large parts of it. I mean, the current version that's out there, the one that I got that is used in universities and colleges, isn't complete. I mean, I believe a good portion of the work was destroyed the originals were destroyed in like a fire or something. So, thankfully, I mean, God, could you imagine like a trilogy of that?
yeah, I mean, there's quite a few of the Marquis de Sade's books out there, and they're all pretty similar, to be honest with you.
One interesting thing.
I'll be honest, I couldn't actually read all of that book, the one you were doing the other day.
Now,
I couldn't read all of it. I had to skip quite large sections.
It's a difficult one, but I didn't realize who it was a German Jew in the 20th century, early 20th century, who resurrected the Marquis de Sade and actually started translating it. And he was I think his name was like Bloch or something like that, and he was like a known sexologist, proper Weimar Republic type. And
I was going to say, AI, was it during Weimar? Because that somehow doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it was during that time when you had all these like transgender these scientists who were interested in transgenderism, like the philosopher, the sex, studying sexual patterns,
and the infamous book burnings, which of course they never tell you what books they were burning.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's always the best bit. And of course, from that it did influence Freud later down the road. So you can
No
actually,
surprise.
and then
No surprise.
and Ayn Rand as well. So you can actually see this great thread of deeply disturbed sadist, narcissist, whatever you want to call them, or sadist-minded people who follow this, where all roads lead back to this disgusting individual.
I'm trying to think who it was now, AI, but I'm fairly sure it was Sade, the French Marxist dude. He tried to rehabilitate de Sade's credentials as an intellectual.
Yeah, I imagine
I think it was Sade.
I think you're right, because I was doing also a live deconstruction of what he was saying, and basically it came down to these characters and decide they reject the formalities of religion. They follow the natural law. Natural law is about pure pleasure. Life is determined purely on just pure pleasure and materialistic needs, where you have the liberal influence in there. So it rejects all forms of higher thinking, of higher being, of hierarchy, all that sort of stuff out the window, because it's wrong. And there is no moral concept of good and evil, because that's part of religiosity, which is outdated, outmoded, so they don't think about it. And so while I was reading this, I was actually seeing the framework of the most, of the social aspect of liberalism, which is what Bowden would call sort of just pure moral syphilis, because it's just rotting. It's a rotting mess that is inflicted upon society.
Oh, look, I'm not by any means the world's most religious man, but even I can see that basic Christianity gives the Western world some sort of moral framework. I can absolutely see that is the truth. It does.
I mean, I also think that the folly is that believing that believing pleasure is the only ultimate force that that the highest form that human can achieve, that man can achieve. I don't believe that. I think that's weak. I think it's weak. It's feminine. I think it's ultimately. I mean, it's ultimately what we see in our society today. I mean, I said yesterday. I said, if anyone watching my stream is in the town or near a town centre, just look out your window, see the state of people milling from clubs to pubs and everything, and are we more how far off are we from Marquis de Sade's sort of society in that book? I mean, I would say everyone is a bit of a sadist in themselves. We're more aligned with that society than we are.
We all have some of that in us, of course we do. But the what's his name? The guy who was described as the most evil man in the world in the 1930s or whatever. I'm trying to remember his name. One of you guys will know who it is. Damn it. He was up in Scotland, and then Mussolini chucked him out of Italy, and I just can't. I'm just blanking on the guy's name. The magician, Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, thank you to Joe and Aaron Hook in the chat. Aleister Crowley. He said, "Do what thou will shall be the whole of the law," which is exactly the same as what de Sade was trying to push. Like just anything you want to do, you should be able to do, which is obviously nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just obviously nonsense. But yeah, no, I thought you did pretty well there, AI. And if anyone wants to see how AI handled that, go and check out his channel. And you should subscribe to his channel in any case. Because he sometimes has to leave us a bit early because he has to get up early for work, I'm going to start off with Adaman this evening for a first subject. Adaman, did you have a first subject for us this evening? Unless you wanted to say anything about what we were talking about just now.
I mean, I won't have to rush off too early today, thankfully. I haven't ever actually been down the rabbit hole about Aleister Crowley. I've always stayed as far away from that as possible.
Interesting character, Adaman, I can tell you.
Yeah.
He was actually a really good solo mountain climber when he was a very young man. But then he got into all this magic and black magic and all this kind of stuff. And ultimately, of course, Mussolini threw him out of Italy.
Yeah, it doesn't really surprise me. But as for topics, I haven't really got one. I mean, I suppose we're going to talk about this Indian trade deal at some point.
Yes, that's one of the things that I thought we might talk about this evening. Also, the Great Poo War of 2025, which at one stage seemed to be stopped, but apparently now isn't, because the Pakistanis started up again.
I have it on good authority, Iron Duke, that big toilet is what's keeping the war going. The big toilet industry in Britain.
Well, I did notice a good. I did notice a good tweet from Tom Rouse from Survive the Jive, who pointed out to some Indians and Pakistanis, and also mostly, obviously, British leftists, that Britain actually didn't want to divide India and Pakistan. That was the Muslim League, basically.
Yeah,
it had nothing to do with Britain.
Yeah, the partition stuff conversations always piss me off, because like the Muslims, the Mohammedans, didn't want to live under a Hindu majority.
Mm-hmm.
And to look at how the Hindus behaved when, like, for example, Gandhi wanted to be a bit more open with Pakistan, you can kind of see, like, I wouldn't want to if I was in their position either. I don't think anyone would. And it's like, they said this on the BBC the other morning when this first kicked off. They were like, all of this has happened because of the partition that Britain did. And it's like, I mean, this is just typical leftist horseshit, where they think that, like, the only time divisible human differences appear is when you draw an imaginary line in the sand. Yeah. Which is, first off, quite telling, because if something so simple can have such a profound effect, then it might as well be real. But again, like, no, the violence happened because there were Mohammedans on the Hindu side and Hindus on the Mohammedan side, and
who the British used to keep safe and used to impose law and order. And of course, as soon as we left, they started murdering each other. Surprise, surprise.
Yes, yeah. And it's like you look at the partition and you think, well, what's the alternative? If these people hold so much hostility for one another, like, you couldn't have put them together. And indeed, when we have put tribes together in states in Africa, we're blamed for that too.
Oh yeah, you're always damned no matter what you do. But the British Empire is always damned no matter what it does. And as far as I can work out, the lefties view the British Empire as like something like, I don't know, Stalin's Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, and it was nothing like either of those things, actually.
But, I mean, they view it as like a cartoonish version, like a modern cartoonish version of Nazi Germany, the Empire from Star Wars, and as like this mega machine of evil and everything. I mean, it's it is a sort of childish depiction. And then I saw Ataman on social media during this whole sort of series of events, a map of, I guess you'd say, elections, the last Raj elections, where you see the Indian National Congress, where they have winning seats, and then you have the Muslim League. And given how the population levels, I mean, as you said, even if India was to be independent in its Raj state, if it was like one Indian nation full of the Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims and what have you, it would have balkanized overnight.
Yeah,
just balkanized immediately.
Well, in the same way that it was, and I know you've done stuff on this during some of your British Empire streams. Like when the British took over India, there was no such thing as India. Basically, it was just a load of different little states all over the place. Most of whom were fighting each other.
The name that pops up, that for most people, when you had the Indian subcontinent but most people would refer to place in India like Hindustan.
Yep.
There would be places like Hindustan would be, if you were to think of, because of the way that the uh, uh, demographics and historical demographic trends work. People who live in what was Hindustan, northern India, that would be where you'd have the Hindu kingdoms, the massive Hindu kingdoms form, or the Islamic kingdoms that would descend from Central Asia. And you'd have like the Delhi Sultanates or the Mamluk states or the Mughal Empire. And so, India's history is just one long, basically, an Islamic, a nomadic society come down from Central Asia, found a great empire or kingdom. It will then break up. You have a resurgence of Hindu states, and then, then another Islamic thing would come along. And so that was the history of it. And of course, when we arrived, the only dominant political force in the Indian subcontinent was the Mughal Empire.
100%. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
true. Mitch, did you have anything to say about this?
I remember one time, like, we reading an article. I think I can't remember from someone, Owen Jones, who said, "Oh, the British Empire like brought homophobia to countries like Uganda and India," and it's. I think once country mentioned where apparently we brought homophobia was Afghanistan, which is funny because of course that's your party. So
Yes, indeed.
yeah, just imagine, if we hadn't culturally enriched India with, our homophobia, imagine what Afghanistan would do without us.
Mitch, do you remember? I think it was our first history stream, and we're on about number 11 now. But our very first one, I think, was about Afghanistan, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Wasn't it about the first Afghan war? And there were there were British officers in the 1830s and early 1840s pointing out about this Bashi Bazaar stuff going on way back then. They haven't changed at all between like 1838 and, I don't know, 2012 or whenever the last British troops left Afghanistan this time.
yeah, and that's one thing, is that you have that you generally have that neck of the woods where was was it Burton or someone else, famous Victorian traveller who
Richard Burton, it would have been Richard Burton, who wrote about some of the homosexual brothels in the Indian Empire. Yes, is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, I think he was Napier, like the same guy who banned Sade. Yeah, he came up with like a division of the world where he said, "Oh yeah, there is these certain parts of the world," and he circled them out as, "I have these countries have like." On one hand, they supposedly have like a very conservative religion in the form of Islam, supposedly, and yet they're also the most degenerate people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And he attributes this because in Islam, of course, one can be polygamous. So, in the absence of women, a lot of the men just turn to degenerate behaviour as a satisfy their sexual urges. Because
and on top of that, Mitch, not only that, which of course you're entirely correct about, but also in Islam, prisoners of war, female prisoners of war, you are absolutely allowed to enslave. It says so in the Quran.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some people on Twitter I know of who I think there's a guy called Mithras who's quite. He's a lot more moderate towards Islam in some ways than I am, like because he's studied it. But like he'll say, and I think I know if Hitman wasn't here, I imagine he would know more about it than me. But basically, you look at Islam and go, it's basically just a religion for basically martial Arab incels, to say the least. Like it's just basically you have Arabs who are just like, okay, you can conquer the world, and if you conquer a bunch of land, you can just like take loads of concubines. Well, problem and like, take loads of like, second wives and whatnot. But the problem you've got is, I think like AA actually mentioned this because in Iran, around the time, because one reason why Iran kept so long until Zoroastrianism, and it took several centuries for Zoroastrianism to be wiped out, was that the Islamic lords would just take loads of women and then monopolize. So all the sex was monopolized by these small Arabic-speaking Islamic elites, and you have the Persian men who were just like, okay, they can't get any female company. They just revolt all the damn time, and they never accept Islam. Only when native Persian dynasties develop that it starts to be accepted, and generally, like, they're having to tone them. Because another thing about it is apparently, some of the least inbred people on the planet are Northwestern Europeans, like such as ourselves and Germanic tribes, as well as Celts, because we were the first ones to be monogamous. Now, technically, the Romans were monogamous, but someone like Julius Caesar, he could sleep with loads of women on the side, and he was generally accepted. For example,
Well, I mean, that's always been the case, Mitch. I mean, even in the most prudish era of the 19th century, people could get away with that stuff if they were popular enough, rich enough, powerful enough, intelligent enough, whatever the hell it might be. That's always been the case. I don't think, and you'll never change that.
If one were to go off Lord Nelson, Lord Nelson, I think he only cheated on his wife with one woman, and that's that Lady Hamilton, I think her name was, in like Napoli or Sicily, wherever it was. So it's kind of like, I don't know, like, because monogamy, people think monogamy comes from Christianity, and they go, no, it was already largely developed thing in Northwestern Europe. Of course, aristocrats in pagan times could take concubines, but generally, you didn't have polygamy in Northern Europe, for example. I think, because it's like Tacitus writing Germania, and Caesar actually comments about this in his commentaries, that the Germanic tribes, they considered it sinful if you were, let's say, below the age of 20 as a man, and you had carnal knowledge of women.
Yes, I heard you say that, I think, on the Discord, mate. Yeah, no, I can believe that. But you look at someone like the Duke of Wellington, for example. The Duke of Wellington was not a faithful husband. All right, he had some excuses. He did. Partly, he promised he was going to marry this Kitty Pakenham chick, and when he came back from India, she changed a hell of a lot for the worse. But he still married her, and he was with her on a deathbed, But he wasn't faithful, Napoleon certainly wasn't faithful, But then, nor was Josephine. So whatever.
How did she change? Did she get fat or something?
She got very old looking,
okay.
And like do some women age really quickly? Like most girls, if you look at them, when they're 18, 19, they have this period when they're like as good as they're ever going to get, right? But in general terms, women after about 21 get worse. That's not always true, but it is largely.
It does happen. My ex is like that. I saw a picture of her recently, and she's like, it's she looks like a mother. Actually, it's like quite disconcerting.
Yeah, this is. I tell you, I was always told as a young man that if you want to know what a chick's going to look like in 25 years, look at her mum. That's what people always told me. But anyway, she became quite old looking. This is Wellington's wife, Kitty Pakenham, but also. When he came back from India, he was not famous, but he was getting there because he'd been very successful in India. And this woman liked to make her own dresses, and Wellington liked to go to balls and the opera, and a chick who made her own dresses wasn't really going to ever suit him very much. He wanted someone flashy on his arm, if you see what I mean. And she wasn't that, but he stuck by his word. He married her, and like I say, he was with her on the day she died. So from that point of view, fair enough.
Because I never could, because I never fully understood. You have someone like Julius Caesar. Now, whenever, for example, when he was in Gaul, he would just sleep with women. Like, for example, he slept famously with Servilia, and among other women all the damn time. And generally, he was accepted by wives of Roman senators and so on. But the husbands aren't going to be faithful. But when it comes to the women cheating, like Caesar's second wife, he divorces her straight out.
In ancient Rome, that was true, and I mean, it was also true in Britain in the late 18th and 19th century. You know, a woman really couldn't get away with that stuff. I mean, Mitch, you were on the stream we did with Aaron Hook when we were talking about the Irish nationalist movement, and we were talking about Parnell. And of course, Parnell was ruined because he had an affair with another Irish nationalist wife. That's what absolutely ruined his career.
Yeah, but that's the thing that gets me. So, it's not the matter of equal. Because, for example, I had to learn in psychology about, for example, when women cheat, it's bad, of course, because you got to factor the paternity of the children, which is actually what happened with Parnell. His father had 3 children, and he cuckolded another man in doing so. Whereas when a man cheats, it's not held as the same way. Like women are a lot more tolerant. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but all I know is basically men and women don't look at cheating the same way.
Well, I mean, look at Donald Trump, the president in America. I mean, anyone who thinks Donald Trump's been faithful all the way through his marriage is not the brightest tool in the shed, and yet he's married to an absolutely beautiful woman. I mean, you can't say that Donald Trump's wife is not a highly attractive woman. She is still.
Well, I can believe he cheated on Ivanka. I don't think he's cheated on his what's her name, the Slovenian one he's married to now, Melania, however you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's cheated on her, but I can't believe. I mean, if you looked at pictures of Ivanka, like his first wife, I can't believe he cheated on her.
Yeah, no. Look. Aubrey makes a good point in the chat, and absolutely, of course, we all agree with that. But then, like I said, if you're going to look at exceptional individuals, are always not going to go along with that. It's going to happen, sadly. I mean, just this week, the professional head of the Royal Navy had to resign because he had an affair with a subordinate officer. Now, to me, that is another reason why you shouldn't have women in the military, because if you didn't have women in the military...
Was it a female? Was it a female officer?
Yes, it was a female officer.
Sorry. That wasn't a dig. That wasn't a dig at the Navy.
AI. You will forgive me, right? In that my son's in the Royal Navy, and this myth that you have to be gay to be in the Navy is just rubbish.
No. That wasn't. It wasn't a dig at the Navy. I knew it comes across a dig of it. I was just curious to see if he.
It was a female, but it was a subordinate officer, and so you can understand why he had to resign. But if you didn't have women in the Navy, then you wouldn't have this problem, would you?
No.
Talking about that, do you remember we had a story that we brought up on this stream a while back of a female captain in the Royal Navy who the actual story was actually about a black woman in the Navy who had hurt herself. She got wounded, injured, thrown around in the captain's quarters.
Yes, indeed.
While the ship was on a training exercise, wasn't it? And it took evasive maneuvers as part of the training exercise.
And the captain was such a good captain. The female captain was so good. Instead of being on the bridge of her warship, she was in her cabin doing
having
things.
Dinner with seemingly like every other female member of the crew, like girl bossing it up or whatever.
Yep. And that's the kindest way of putting it, Adam. that is absolutely the kindest way of saying it. But
Shaniqua got to do her nails.
yeah, in the captain's cabin, of course. I don't know. I mean, it's not normal for like non-commissioned sailors to have dinner on their own with the captain. It just isn't.
Yeah, I think there was like 4 of them in there or something.
Yeah, that's just not a normal thing. It just isn't.
Yeah, but it's because it's like in-group preference, isn't it? Like it's all women, so
I don't know.
us girls have got to stick together. That would probably be the sort of atmosphere.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, but and possibly a bit of lesbianism involved in that.
Maybe.
Because
I mean, I'm going to assume that it was just them having dinner and chatting
I
away
look
about
at
how cool
Mitch,
it was being girls in the Navy.
Mitch, it's been well known for a long time that the women in the military fall into two camps. There are those who think joining the military is great because they're going to be surrounded by blokes, and however bad they might be, they'll find a bloke. There are those girls. And then there are the girls who are interested in other girls. And I mean, that's been known for a very long time. So, let's be truthful here. We're not part of the establishment on this channel, and we can actually tell the truth,
I remember there was a documentary on the latest British aircraft carrier. What was it called? Queen Elizabeth?
Queen
Is that the
Elizabeth and
one
Prince of Wales. Queen elizabeth and Prince of
Yeah.
Wales. They're known as the Queen Elizabeth class, and there are two of them. Yes.
Yeah, and there was it was like a two-part documentary. I remember it was on television. I remember just like watching it, and it showed that it was you had like a lot of female sailors, male sailors, and everything, and they had like the pride stuff and usual stuff. But one thing I noticed more frequently is the number of disagreements and falling outs, where effectively the male sailors naturally would be flirting and forming relationships with the female sailors, and then you would have some sort of love triangle, and then it would create problems. And so, like every other day, you had their officers basically calling them in to sort of resolve these sorts of disputes and problems. And I was just thinking to myself, like, it's like, Jesus Christ, what is it? This is like what's this meant to be? Like some sort of fucking school or something? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Look at it this way, AI. If you have, say, 10% women on a warship, and let's say the warship is a frigate and it has a crew of, I don't know, 130 people, say, yeah, and 10% of them are women. So, like, I don't know, 12 to 15 of them, perhaps. Well, of course, you're going to get the situation that you're talking about, particularly when they go on a long deployment, which might last 4 months. And they might go ashore in that 4 months, maybe 3 times, if they're lucky. And the people who were absolutely against women serving at sea, the people who were most against it, were naval wives for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, like, for example, let's say, submarine, right? You got, tight quarters. You've got a bunch of men who are far away from home, and then you bring in a woman, and a lot of
What do
those
you
men.
What do you think's going to happen, Mitch? Yes.
Well, put it this way, I wouldn't want to be let's say, I wouldn't want to be a bloke in the toilet in my scenario.
Well, I tell you, mate, this is. But listen, I'm totally against women serving in frontline roles, including on warships. I don't think there should be women on warships. But this is why it's a bad idea. It just is.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I can talk to a bunch of guys in woodworking, and like, one of them served in the Royal Navy in submarines, and they'll just say, like like he'll say he's got mates in the Navy serving currently. He'll just like, on one hand, they're wanting to serve and whatnot, but at the same time, they just get at times demoralised just looking at how much women are being pushed upon them, knowing full
And
well
of course,
that
they often get fast promotion, Mitch, because of DEI. They often get faster promotion than blokes because they want to promote them. The authorities want to promote them. It's just not, and they change the fitness standards all the time because women just can't do male fitness standards. They can't,
Yeah, so
not strong enough.
You got like 5 foot women who can't jump over a 5 foot wall.
Oh, the most popular tweet I ever did on X, Mitch, was British Army girls, and there were 2 of them trying to get over a 4 foot wall, and they couldn't. It's like, and they tried time after time after time after time, and in the end, this NTO instructor just tells her to go around because she's never going to get across it.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
I
That must
remember-
terrify the Ruskies if we ever went to war with them.
I remember that because I remember you had some sort of seething people in the comments saying to you, what was it? Well, at least they're trying, Mr. Iron Duke. What? I bet you can't do it. And
you know, I can't get over a 4-foot wall. I had a triple heart bypass last year, and I can still get over a 4-foot wall. But anyway,
it's like one of the things where I think that NCO, like that dual instructor, he was probably thinking walking a tightrope between wanting to bollock him, but on the other hand, also realizing, okay, if he were to bollock him, they'll just replace him with someone else who's even worse.
Yes, that's what always happens.
I told you guys on this stream. I remember seeing a clip going round of a where they were on sort of a training exercise where they were doing like an overnight camping, overnight set up a camp, and you had like a sentry or stag as it called, and the female soldier who was meant to be on watch basically fell asleep. The training officers who were basically serving the role as the enemy walked up into camp, was like bang bang, all of you dead, and nothing was really done for her. They sat her down and basically explained to her, just like in a very calm and concise manner, where you went wrong. And I was just thinking to myself, like, sorry, excuse me, she got like the whole company killed. What's going on here? I think there should be a bit more of like a severer sort of punishment or learning curve, because that's kind of a big fuck up in the training, getting everyone killed. I don't know. That seems like a big fuck up.
Many moons ago, I went out with a British Army girl, and this was just about the time when, because the British Army, as always, was getting smaller and smaller, although it was twice the size that it is now back then. The British Army women had to start doing their own guards on their bases, you understand, like not in the field, but like if they were in a barracks somewhere, instead of the local British infantry blokes being sent over there to guard them, they had to do their own. And this chick said to me, she said, "Oh, look, if a provisional IRA terrorist came up to the gate, I couldn't really shoot him." She told me that. She said, "I wouldn't be able to shoot him." Now, all right, some women can shoot people, I'm sure. Absolutely, I know some women can shoot people, but she said to me, she said, "No, I'd never be able to shoot somebody." What the fuck she was doing in the army, I don't know, but I mean, there you go.
I mean, on this point, I will. I tell you what, Elmer from Lord of the Rings. You know that war is the domain of men. Erwin, is that's I agree with that statement.
So do I. 100%.
I think it is a straight up a straight up biological thing, and to be honest, I mean, she isn't wrong. I mean, I'm not cross with her because I mean, it is bad that she believes that, but in her position, but ultimately, it's not like wrong in that sort of sense. It's a biological thing, but yeah, maybe we need like a war to jolt us out of this.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just don't think that Britain, and especially the British Armed Forces, are in any state to have any sort of war at the moment. I really don't. The British Armed Forces are appallingly weak and tiny, and the morale ain't that good either, for the most part, at the moment. And you've got this idiot two-tier Keir Starmer continually goading the Ruskies. Like the Ruskies would murder us in a couple of weeks if they wanted to. In terms of like stuff like long-range missiles, from aircraft as well as from like land-based missiles. We have no defense against that stuff in Britain at the moment, literally none. And you have this twat. I mean, I was arguing about this on X today. You have this twat Starmer saying, "Oh, we're laying down the law to Putin." Putin will just laugh at Starmer and idiot, what's his name, Macron from France. He will just laugh, particularly if Trump walks away.
Yeah, and we haven't got any good generals. I mean, sure, you could have like.
Well, it wouldn't do you
dodgy
much good if you
liberal-
had any good generals, AI, because we don't have any troops. The whole British
We don't have any
army is
troops.
about 72,000 people, including far too many women. It would, if you was to put that whole British army into Ukraine, right, in about 3 months, it would be combat ineffective at best.
Yeah,
Because of so many casualties, it would be combat ineffective. And incidentally, the British weapons stocks of everything except small arms ammunition would probably run out in about 2.5 weeks.
and you couldn't rely on national service because again that would need training, and you just wouldn't. That would be ineffective in on itself. Because
It would take you a year before you ended up with soldiers who you could actually put into combat. I mean, this is what's happening to Ukraine. They're pulling guys off the street, literally pulling them away from their screaming wives and crying children. And they're giving them like 2 weeks training and then putting them in the front line. And then they're surprised the Ruski artillery kills them in a couple of weeks, you know?
Yeah, but just basically press ganging them.
That's exactly what they're doing. Yes, it's exactly the same as press gangs. Although, to be fair to the Royal Navy, press gangs were only supposed to really try and get professional sailors. They didn't always, but that's what they were meant to do. But yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, Mitch. Carry on, Mitch.
I was just going to say, I don't know if you because they got first topic of the day. I don't know if we want to talk about reform regarding, because there's a comment by Gawain Taylor where he says, because there was like a sign on the motorway going Redditch reform.
Oh yeah, I saw that, Mitch. Yeah, go for it, mate. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just seeing this as a matter of, well, the leadership of reform, you know, they're happy to use all the anger and rage that is present within England, but they themselves don't fully understand how fully angry the country is. So you just got someone like Gawain Taylor, who's, and I don't think this is a problem with a lot of British people in general, is they have this sort of bourgeois temperament of going, oh, well, we want things to change, but we don't want to have this kind of sentiment. Like, they don't want to be associated with anything quote unquote nasty or impolite or comes across as, you know, mean-hearted and mean-spirited. So you have someone Gawain Taylor recoiling when people on his own side in reform are like, no Labour welcome here. When, I mean, look at what the Labour Party's done to the country in terms of the rape gang.
Yeah, 100%, Mitch. But also, let's point out that Gawain Taylor himself got chucked out of reform, didn't he?
Oh no, he's not chucked out of reform. He's still in with Farage. I just think the job title he had got turned over to someone else, I believe. So he's still massive.
He got sacked. He basically got sacked or demoted, and was replaced by somebody else. And you know, I'm not. This isn't. Gawain Taylor is like the court eunuch. I'm sorry, but that's the it was bad what happened to him, but he's got no balls. He's just got straight up no balls.
Yeah, that's one thing worth noting in mind is his daughter, like, is a massive shitlib. And I'm sat there thinking, I gotta wonder, like, if you're on the right and your daughter is a massive shitlib, like Corbyn type, like from like, I don't know, 7 years back or something, I have to wonder what the hell happened in the Gawain Taylor's household. Because usually,
he's probably some. I mean, he's some like Thatcherite basic Thatcherite social liberal who isn't very happy with the strength of progressive ideas in the West. I mean, if he was
Sounds
exposing
like
her to
Nigel
Bowden,
Farage, AI. That sounds a
yeah.
bit like Nigel Farage.
When I have when I have children, I'm going to be exposing them to Bowden videos. I'm going to be exposing them to Zoomer historian. I mean, they're not going to be shit libs. They will not be shit libs.
I don't know. What was it? It was Therium, I think, in our Discord, who might have been in the chat earlier, actually, who said that there are certainly elements in reform leadership which are about containment, and he was referring to this Towler guy. So yeah, what do you think, Adamant, about that?
Yeah, I saw this. I don't really. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like Reform have obviously, like for a long time, turned themselves into a party that's not capable of sort of properly encompassing like the rage that's out there. Like, I mean, there's an extent to which some people on Twitter, probably myself included, would be like, you know, if we had like, if we were the political figure in that hour, we'd be like, yes, there'll be more than just banners swinging from the overpasses when we win the next general election.
Yes.
But of course, like Farage's strategy is that he wants to stay on the safe side of any rhetoric like that. He wants to be squeaky clean. He wants to present themselves as the sensible people in the room. The problem with that has always been, and you kind of see this with Towler a lot, is that if you sit there and say it's not about race or it's not even really about immigration, eventually all the people in your party actually start believing that. Like, you know, the people that go to the
100%.
dinners and the people that run the party apparatus day to day, which are the ones you want to be radical, they end up
100%. I
Yeah, you
could
end up-
not agree with you more. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I mean, sorry.
I was going to say Aaron reckons that because of this, it'll be a matter of like the people on the ground level, so the guys that I will talk to in reform, they'll push the leadership to be a lot more radical going our way because, put simply, to Mark Farage, he loves to be liked. He's not going to want to be in a position where he's to the left of a vast majority of the people knocking on doors for him. He's going to. So it's a matter of you can kind of pull Farage our way simply because for activists, for people knocking on doors, are basically of a Steve Law temperament in like 5 years' time.
Adamant, you
Yeah.
know, like I was in a Discord which was very, and I think you're still in it, and Mitch, that was very like reform basically, and I ended up leaving merely because these people couldn't tolerate me posting stuff in there that wasn't in favor of the reform leadership, and I'm afraid, I think the danger is exactly what you just said, Alan. That if you don't keep up the pressure on the reform leadership, then you're going to end up with so many like Liberal Democrats and former Labour people and all the rest of it in your party that your party is going to be meaningless, even if they manage to win. And to me, that's a complete waste of time, and we can't afford that.
Take a look at the MP who recently won that by-election at the local elections. What's her name?
Yep.
Yeah, only a couple years ago, and it was all revealed through like people taking snapshots from Facebook and Twitter. She was welcoming Somalis into her community, like a community centre, and talk about how it's important to integrate these asylum seekers into the local community when she was like the local Lord Mayor or whatever. Yeah. So
Adam,
yeah.
look, sorry, mate, because it was me interrupted you when you were starting this. So please carry on, because I think you're just entirely correct about this. But carry on, mate.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this was the same problem with the Tories before, right? The average there's a study people can look up called "Mind the Values Gap," and and it looks at like how basically it basically shows how like MPs of every party were to the left of the general public. Even Tory MPs were to the left of the general public. But if you look down, it also breaks it down based on like general public, party members, councillors, and so on and so forth. Or I think it's like activists, councillors, so on and so forth. And basically, as you go closer to the base, the party actually goes to where you think it should be. So like Tory activists and Tory councillors are to the right of the general public, or they were when this study was done. And like Labour activists and councillors are to the left of Labour MPs. They're like, they're full on communists, right? But it never ends up, you can't actually effectively turn that into any sort of pressure in any direction, because the party is always sort of insulated from it because of the way parties work. Once they start to get people elected, they become, almost like a government institution in their own right. So
yeah,
I mean, this is where I kind of think that as much as I would like to think that these people are right about reform and we can indeed just vote our way out of this, I don't think it's going to end up being that way.
I just wish that the people who do have faith in reform, right? And I'm not anti-reform. I'm really not. Like, I was glad they did well in the local English elections and what have you. But I just wish that the people who think that Nigel Farage is the best thing since sliced bread, and continually will tell you that Zia Yusuf is a good bloke, which I'm far less likely to believe for obvious reasons. I just wish these people could see, all right, it would also be good to have a right wing in our party which keeps us honest. And they won't. They don't want that at all. That which is why I left that Discord, because I'm just not prepared to be in a Discord where everyone keeps calling me a wank, basically. I mean, not literally, because they're not literally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, the other problem is, of course, is whether you're talking about that Discord or whether you're talking about like all these Tory councillors and Tory MPs that are fleeing to reform in the hopes of essentially fleeing a sinking ship. It'll be significantly easier for reform to get killed if it doesn't hold up essentially its side of the bargain with the electorate that it's courting, than it was for people to kill, than it was for the Tories to get killed off. Like, significantly easier.
Yeah, they don't have 250 years of tradition behind them.
No. Yeah, I mean, the reform could go out as quickly as they've come in if they're not capable of holding up any end of the bargain on their end.
Yeah, and that's the sort of key thing, because a couple of years ago I did a stream where I sort of another book review, but it was a review of Julius Evolar's A Right Wing Handbook Guide for the Youth, and in that it was forwarded by a Hungarian nationalist who's not Viktor Orban's party, but the other sort of right wing party in Hungary, which name. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it was the leader of that, and that was a forward to that, so I was able, and also dedication to that party as well. So it was quite an interesting read. But one thing that sort of stands out is effectively in the time like we're in, where people are absolutely sick to death of the way that our country is governed. Because remember what Bowden said: no one really wants to vote Labour, Tory, or Lib Dem, and that's even back then. Today, it's amplified to such an extreme level, and effectively you have to be radical and not be afraid to be. And the right and the containment on the right, and the same with people in that Discord, will lead you to believe, well, if you're not radical on these issues, or you're not dedicated on these issues, if you are dedicated and radical on these issues, you'll turn people away. Well, let's look at the other political side for a moment. Let's look at the left. Let's look at the Green Party. Now, they are probably in mainstream politics in Britain one of the most representative extreme wings of left-wing politics, and look at what they were able to achieve. They have gained councillors. They have gained in last election 4 MPs. They've taken over cities like Bristol, and they did it through radical politics, and radical modes of being that to from the left wing side. And I mean, also you mentioned Corbyn and the effect of momentum with Corbyn. So I don't believe in this. Well, we have to skirt around the issue, because the reason why reform and the Tories and why support always falls apart is because people at the end of the day aren't. They're just given. It feels like you're returning back to the sort of safe liberal plantation.
Mitch, what do you think about this? Because I know you're a bit more positive about reform than most of us. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong about that, by the way, mate. So, yeah, what's your view on this?
Well, that's the thing. Like Farage loves to be liked. I mean, there is a bit of an ego on Farage, so I reckon there's a matter of he he doesn't want to be known as a guy who's backstabbed all his supporters in the back in the way that
Hopefully,
Friday
yeah.
wins. I don't. I think the thing he'll be guilty. You think he'll be guilty of is not going far enough. And I think just the fact of I think Boswell said it. He said that there's going to come a point where even young women just get so radicalized just by how crap this country is going, like that everything will just go to a point of, in a way, the Overton window was so far to the right. The society will get collective whiplash from that effect. Such will be how radically things go. Because I mean, it's like, for example, Jess Gill. She's created that women for safety, or whatever it's called, where it's all about women not wanting to get groped by the Middle Easterners with imported because reasons. And I wonder how, and you can imagine that could end up catching on in terms of women don't really get to have a luxury of believing in feminism when they can't even go and walk down the street, let's say to a nightclub, without possibly getting groped by a bunch of migrants. So it's like the same. That's what's happened in France, where half of the young women, at least, are voting for Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella because things are that bad in France that young women can't go outside their doors without either male chaperone.
You think, Mitch, that would also change like mothers, because do they want their daughters to be in this situation?
Well, I know that there's a mother 2 doors from me who she hasn't voted in years, but she voted Reform back in the locals, including my mother as well. So there are instances where, and it's something like back in the general election, it was only 20% of women who were like, let's say women like Gen X mothers and basically women who would be mothers of like young women or teenage girls, for example, that kind of age group. Only 20% of them voted Reform in the general election, whereas in the locals, it's like half of them. So it's going to be a position where you're going to see a lot of demographics churn out more support for Reform as time passes, including a lot of women, because, if you're a young woman, for example, so that's one thing worth noticing. I think it was back in November, they did a poll where it said 20% of Zoomer men and 19% of Zoomer women are voting Reform. So there's not really much of a gender gap amongst Zoomers. The biggest gender gap is between millennials, where you get there's like a 10-point percentage gap between millennial men and millennial women in terms of voting Reform. So that's kind of like where the gap is to be seen.
There was a conversation in my office a week before last where, obviously, because we're down in the southeast, someone brought up a news story about a boat in Dungeness of obviously migrants, and one of the sort of more middle-aged women mentioned about why couldn't we just gun them down on the beach, essentially. And I was quite shocked that every woman in the office agreed with her, like across all the age groups, which was really surprised me. Admittedly, they have me there as a constant bad influence, but still, yeah.
I mean,
I did find it quite surprising.
I've had that I've had that in my workplace as well. People, especially, I mean, ones that usually I would have thought would have been more left leaning or sympathetic. I do wonder if women I think someone mentioned in chat Ed Dutton. I think he's talked about this, where women sort of change their views depending on the social situation they're in. So if they know you're a bit more right wing and leaning, they'll sort of reorientate their mindset to that. I mean, the only time I would say that would be different is, say, if they're from another race or ethnic background, they'd be more loyal to their own tribal group, and I've seen that before plenty of times. There's they'll be sort of towards more their own vanguard group, but I've seen it where those who I would have, I believe to have left sort of more left wing liberal values actually be a bit more to the right.
Mm.
But I don't know.
I would also say another thing about Farage is he's had conversations with the likes of Dominic Cummings and Liz Truss. So I will say perhaps there's an element of, because we've noticed Farage being a lot more gung-ho about deportations now compared to what he said back in like Stephen Edgerton interview, for example. So I think, and apparently David Starkey had a dinner one time like a month ago with Zia Yusuf apparently. So there are some
Wow.
people. So it's, I mean, I don't really watch David Stark. All I know about him, he bangs a drum stating about the constitutional damage related to us. So it's a matter of, well,
Yeah, I quite like
I,
David Stark. I quite like him, but he's very definitely. He's an old gay guy, so I mean, there's that. But
Yeah.
on the whole, I quite like him.
I mean, he's a
think,
good. He's the best Tudor. If you want a good, like the best Tudor historian out there, that David Starkey is that he is the best on the Tudor family.
100%. He's also pretty good on the English Civil War. But yeah, I mean, there are things I don't agree with David Starkey about. But on the other hand, he will say truthful things like, because David Starkey came from a pretty working class family and managed to become a big time academic, but that was all because of grammar schools and stuff that doesn't exist anymore, basically,
yeah. So I'm looking just going. I think Reform, they're going to have a lot of conversations with people in our sphere who are just going to tell them, look, you need to do, you need to have you need to have a position on, for example. I think Ben Habib, for example, I won't be surprised if there are plenty of people within Reform who are just like telling Farage, look, if you are going to get into government, you're going to have to make sure that you can't get toppled like Liz Truss was, and that you can't just get, that you don't get massive blocks. Because I mean, for example, you got Reform. Apparently, they're saying all Reform council areas, which includes my neck of the woods, so I'm pretty safe from this. They're going to prevent any indoor migrant hotels. And technically, they don't have a jurisdiction for that. However, it can be a good PR move on part of Reform councillors to be seen as vetoing any sort of migrant hotel, even if technically they don't have a legal jurisdiction to prevent it. Because at the end of the day, the Home Office can always overrule. But
Well, I mean, they should get in touch with Gavin Bobby, who's excellent at stopping mosques and all these sorts of things. But yeah.
I mean, there is. I mean, that Zaya Yusuf though is a on a just a pure campaigning political. It is a problem. I mean, the one thing, and I will mention this quickly, is that he tweeted out, and Mitch will probably know this, that all non-British non-Union Jack flags, so anything that isn't Union Jack or the English flag can't and can no longer fly over councils. Now that's obviously that was a reference to, I think that was, I believe, to be a reference to like the LGBT flag and Ukraine flag, but it was then hijacked by some Tories and then some Labour councillors and MPs, and I think even Generic sort of got in on the action and saying, "Oh, look at Zai Yusuf not wanting to fly like the flag of you know of Staffordshire, or not wanting to fly the county flag of this county or this county,
Are they
and wanting to
are they
ban the county
against
flag."
AI? Are they against flying the cross of St George?
Well, the point is that because of the person that they came from, my point on the matter is, I mean, yes, it was absolutely nonsense, but in my mind, the fact that they had an alien who was talking about what flags can and cannot be flown, and the Tories and Labour were able to sneak in there and then do a bit of posturing from the right, which did like discredit reform in that regard. And I know
Nah, I,
on
I, I would say that somewhere was a Tory council. There are only two flags that ever flown: the Union Jack, naturally, which wasn't much. But remember, was the Ukrainian flag. There was no Staffordshire Knot nor St George's flag. Only those two flags.
Bullshit,
So,
man.
so
That's just
however,
bullshit.
Reform, however, have taken them the Ukrainian flag. So at the moment,
Well, good, good.
yeah. So, but I imagine that flagpole, that's not having a flag. I imagine it'll probably be the St George's flag, personally. Now, I haven't met anyone. That, for example, when people, if you ask people in reform, they're just like, oh, this completely nothing burger. And I can't say I've come across anyone in my personal life who who thought that ZUs, because I mean, the thing is, ZUs, but I still haven't made up my mind yet as to whether to like him or loathe him. Because on one hand, he is chairman, and reform is quite organised, as like, I can tell from like my neck of the woods where there's quite a lot of branches around and so on. However, Zia Yusuf did report Rupert to the police, starting threats with a gun 3 months after supposed threats with a gun were issued to him. So,
Even though he's half the age of the person he's accusing. Yeah.
well, the thing is, like, if you are threatened with a gun, you go to the police straight away. You don't wait 3 months to do it.
Exactly. No, you don't.
However, Rupert Lowe, I've gone off him quite a bit lately. That's just because all he does, he's gone the same way Ben Habib, where he just criticises reform, but he hasn't got anything to replace reform. Like, he's just a lone guy.
I get you, Mitch. I do get you. I see where people say that, but when you get chucked out for no great reason, as far as I can see, which I think is true in the case of both Ben Habib and the other chap, I can kind of see why they go that way, you know?
I think the trouble is with Rupert, it does seem like a lover scorn thing. Like, yeah, we get it. He was chucked out of the party. It was unfair, unjust. It was a stitch up. But the trouble is, the more that he attacks, it's kind of you maxed out that card at that point. I think. I do understand what Mitch is saying. The constant. Every time I see a Rupert Lowe post now, I mean, he's been doing stuff on like the the grooming gangs and about being talking about bringing about the death penalty and deportations and the usual stuff.
All really good stuff, by the way.
All really good stuff. But then every now and then, I also see like him sort of constantly going back to the whole. And also reply. I mean, he replies to every single person who brings up the Nigel Farage reform debacle. He will reply to, even
maybe
like just random accounts.
In some ways. Yeah, maybe that's a good thing in some ways.
Maybe not random accounts with like 100 followers. I mean, I would say, I would say that in some cases there are people who are just like nobodies where you don't reply, but the problem is the more that it kind of feels like a sort of like a like a sort of scorned lover, crazy ex who can't get over.
I just don't see how it wouldn't be better after these last elections for Reform to have 6 MPs rather than 5. I don't see how that is any good thing.
I will say with Rupert, right. To be fair, like apparently he helped. Apparently, when he was trying to become an MEP back in 2019 for the Brexit Party, apparently he made way for some Tory candidate or some. I don't have the full details on me, but apparently he's not the best of team workers. Now I can understand if they were to just chuck him out because of that, but all this extra stuff about apparently him threatening Z Yusuf with a gun, and apparently, like. There are people who've worked with him who said, okay, he's a classic English gentleman. Now, yeah, perhaps he might not be the best of team workers, which if Reform were to just say that, okay, we're chucking him out because we don't find him a good team worker, and, we don't, but we find him, because, I mean, even someone like Gawain Taylor, apparently, he said on Peter McCormack's show, "Oh, Rupert is a good MP, but he's not a good team worker." That was genuinely the reason. However, as I said, this extra stuff about apparently threatening Z Yusuf with a gun, and Z Yusuf taking a few months to report that. I just think, yeah, this is a matter of we really are just going overboard with wanting this guy at the party to a point where they're willing to shop him to the bloody police. And apparently they're saying like they're going to take away his guns, which I just don't see how this is nothing. Just like on one hand, yeah, you have Rupert appearing at times like a scorned lover about it, but also you've got Z Yusuf, who, as I said in the chat, like, I haven't made my mind up fully about him because on one hand, Reform is well organised and it's probably been a big part to him. However, I still don't fully accept Rupert Lowe as being some of his criminal who threatens God with guns in ways of a.
That's my view, Mitch. Adam, I was just going to say, well, you're kind of, I think you're fairly neutral on some of this stuff. So what do you think?
Well, I was actually just going to, not to change the subject, but can I just, Loafer Sheffield brought up about Emily Thornberry in chat and the famous tweet she made where she posted this picture of a house with a white van out front and the St. George's flag. I actually think she wasn't making the dog whistle that people think she was making. Bearing in mind, she posted this before she was going canvassing. Canvassing can be quite a nervous activity. You know, you don't know what sort of doorstep reaction you're going to get, and she could have massively inflamed, and she would know this as well, that she could massively inflame the situation. I think she actually meant it in a positive way, but other Labour pundits and Labour activists and Labour members took it for a dog whistle because they were looking for a dog whistle. And when they were called out on this, they tried to throw her under the bus for it, essentially. But this also kind of goes to show like these sorts of this sort of internal party dynamics where a party ends up sort of in its own echo chamber all the time, because it kind of ends up just becoming like effectively like an office of the civil service at some point.
Isn't Emily Foreman because during the whole Brexit thing, she was just a massive, like she just spent time just like being anti-Brexit and so on. So I can understand why a lot of people just looked upon her for, yeah, she's been a sniveling.
Yeah.
Sniveling I mean,
the thing is, yeah, a lot of it was that there were a lot of lefties that jumped on that tweet and basically took the message that they thought they saw, which was gammon, and ran with it. And that was kind of a lot of where sort of we saw it and thought we saw it for what it was. And it might as well have been what it was ultimately, because that is kind of broadly how most of that side see it. It's just I don't think Emily Thornberry herself saw it that way, but you know, that's kind of by the by the time it's all said and done.
I'm just knowing.
No, I remember when.
I'm just knowing Lord Tharium's comment that I've put on the screen, which you guys can see. So, I mean, if that's true, that's despicable by some people because, and it's just ridiculous that Rupert Lowe would do that. I mean, just go away.
Yeah, like Rupert Lowe is Jenny. Like you know, if character assessments by third parties are to mean anything, then the fact that he's former secretary like from years ago, I think like when he was doing the Southampton thing, said, "Oh yeah, the guy's basically a classic English gentleman." Now, does that come across as the activities of a classic English gentleman?
No,
nah,
of course not. No.
But aren't these? I mean, I haven't been in this particular Discord for a while, but are these the same people that just assumed the dementia claim when that came up and just
yes.
Absolutely.
I mean that's disappeared now.
You don't need to. Rupert doesn't even. Rupert Swan. He knows you don't like with Zia. He was a Goldman Sachs. Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs fella. I can guarantee you, if anyone with a good enough, can find a good detective agency to do a bit of background digging on dirt, you'll be able to find something on Zia, which will, you'll be able to find something on that guy that could, that he wouldn't want to find. So I why would he want to kill him? There's those sorts of people always have some pretty nasty skeletons in their closet.
Listen, I mean, the thing that got me about the other Discord is I know for a fact that some of the people in that Discord, not all of them, and not, by the way, the guy who actually runs it, but many of them, and probably the two I see, the second in command there, definitely, in fact, like if Reform reversed their policy and said, "Oh, we're going to welcome Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib back into the party," that person and some of the others would absolutely reverse in their own length and just go back entirely. I know this. I know this for a fact.
Yeah.
They just would. If the Reform leadership said, no, actually, Rupert Lowe's right, Ben Habib's right, and we're getting rid of Zia Yusuf, at least one of the people there would immediately reverse his position without moving forward at all and just follow the party line again. Like that person would have been great as a young communist in Mao Zedong's Chinese Communist Party, raving his little red book, would have been fabulous for them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, with the case of Ben Habib, I mean, I look at Ben Habib as a matter of bit of a like you have him and David Bull, who tried to get into Parliament but didn't. David Bull largely fell in line, whereas Ben Habib largely just spent the time just complaining about, for example, Zia Yusuf. Now, yeah, I'm generally of the position of, well, Zia Yusuf, I mean, he's a Sri Lankan Muslim. Now, I know, everyone knows I've come from the West Midlands. I've had plenty of bad enough experiences with dealing with Muslims where I just go, it takes me a great deal for me to think of ever trusting one. So, I mean, this is Zia Yusuf, worked for Goldman Sachs. Before, no one ever heard of him before he took up the chairmanship, because he did a speech during the general election, and then you've got him just after, on the 11th of July, becoming chairman, and you sit there thinking, yeah. However, I also have, as John, as other people in that server will say, at the end of the day, it's also worth noting there is clearly some merit to it because the Reform is quite well organised, and you could say Zia Yusuf played a part in that. But at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, it's a bit dodgy, but the guy used to work for Goldman Sachs, and I mean, I remember trying to look up his record. All I saw was some financial info, sure, but no one really knows his personal life. But we don't know. I don't think we know actually the year he was born, even. That's
what a surprise.
That's how little we know of the guy, and it's well, it's one of the things where I still haven't fully made up my mind on Zia Yusuf, even though there's a lot of good reason to distrust him, but there's also got a lot of good reasons to think perhaps there's some merit to him being the chairman, as much as it can be begrudgingly accepted in terms of organisation within Reform. I'm kind of 50. I'm kind of at 60-40 in favour of trusting him.
My position on this, Mitch, is I hope Reform do well, and I hope Reform will actually do some good things. But I couldn't possibly say that I was confident about this at this stage, to be honest.
I would say that if Reform were in part with government, they'll do a lot. I reckon they would with all the benefits for foreigners and so on. But I don't see them turning at legal immigrants. I've had to Rubicon. I don't think they're ready to cross. That might change in the next few years, as I said, given the way the wind is blowing. You're going to have plenty of, let's say, the people on the rank and file who are going to look at this and go, okay, it's not just the illegals who are the problem. A lot of it's legal. For example, Burnley had elected an 18-year-old Muslim woman who doesn't believe in She doesn't believe in a lot of the liberal principles regarding, like male-female equality. Like, she believes that men and women should be separate from one another in public spaces, for example. And it's stuff like that where you go, look, at some point, this is going to start begging some questions within Reform Party quarters to go.
Yeah,
It's not just illegal.
this is not our culture, guys. This is not our culture.
So
That men
I
and
think,
women have to be separate in all spaces. No, they don't. Some is all right, but not all.
yeah, and that's the thing is like you're gonna have it because it's like often like you be, for example, the shit let's keep arguing to that adolescence film and they keep going like, oh, it's because Andrew Tate that men are going this way, and I go, no, it's just reality. No, it's just reality of modern day Britain. That's what turns people right wing. Is just going out going outside your front door and dealing with the outside world is what is enough to turn you right wing. Even like Aaron Bastani at times, he goes against fly tipping, and half the left will just hound upon him, calling him the grifter because he's against fly tipping. That's what we're up against. We're against people who think that going against fly tipping is fascism.
Fly tipping. Okay. Atman, anything else on this? And then I'm going to ask AI if he has a first subject.
No, that's about it from me on this one, I think.
AI, did you have a first subject for this week? Oh, hang on, he's muted. Maybe he's away from the keyboard.
Sorry, no, I was muted.
Yeah,
I didn't realise.
Okay.
First subject.
We're an hour and a half in, so we've probably only got half an hour or so left anyway.
Left, yeah. The only thing I'd actually just sort of touch on, maybe the papal election, the Pope's election, the papal election.
Well,
What this
I've
means
got
for...
nothing to say about this because people have told me that I know nothing about this, and I know nothing about this. So I've had one or two people say I saw Apostolic Majesty say this was not the worst guy they could have elected, but then there was someone on my Discord who said he was. So I don't know, frankly. I really don't. I'm not a Catholic.
I mean,
my mum was, but I'm not. So
I was sort of rooting for. I mean, I'm not a Catholic, so I technically I have no horse in this race. But I wanted Cardinal Pizzaboli to win because for the name alone, like come on.
yeah, but they change their name once they win.
I know, but Cardinal Pizzaboli, like in Italian, he is like the Italian anti-Zionist. I mean, the amount of fun you could have there. But anyway, sorry. Anyway, yeah, this one is an American cardinal, and he's from Chicago. Connor, who's featured on my channel and on your channel, Iron Duke, is from near that neck of the woods, and so I contacted him to ask him if he was aware of him, and so he's from the he's from the Augustine sort of grouping within the church, and he's a disciple. He was sort of brought in under Francis. He's been quite anti-Trump in his posts. He's a registered Republican, but that doesn't really sort of mean anything in that regard. But my initial reaction to this was that I wanted a European. I thought for Europe, it was better to have a European Pope because, well, I know everyone goes, well, the church is universal, yada yada. It's like, well, okay, yeah, fine, I guess all that. But at the end of the day, Roman Catholicism is an expression of European identity. It's part of European civilization, and so it should remain in the hands of Europeans. And that's just my view. And with an American Pope, my initial reaction was that this is just going to be like Americanisms is now just going to be, because it's just another route for it to sort of spread into European culture and civilization. And I'm calling this now as a prediction. I will not be surprised come, the next presidential election, which let's say it's between Vance and um, I think Gavin Newsom. I wouldn't be surprised if the Pope gets a bit political and is sort of like gets himself embroiled in this. I do have a crazy thick conspiracy theory though, and there's no proof of this. It's just my like tinfoil conspiracy theory here. I actually would not be surprised if somehow the Democrats rig the the conclave to get this guy in to sort of help rebuild the Democrat voter base, the Catholic voter base in America, to get voting for Catholics again. I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds mental, but I don't know. That was my initial reaction.
Yeah, I've heard apparently of this new Pope. He was arguing against bloody JD Vance over Ordo and Morris. I think the phrase is the Order of Love, where basically, because JD Vance was saying, okay, well, naturally, it goes up family, community, ethnic group, and then everyone else after that. Whereas this new Pope was arguing against it on the basis, well, you should love everyone equally, and you should, so you should treat your neighbour in exactly the same way you treat your family, and treat everyone equally. So, well, and it's just basically all the more pathological compassion that we must have, even towards complete strangers, in the name of like equality and other things of that sort. Where and otherwise you're being nasty. And so, and I wouldn't be surprised if before long you're just gonna have Trump just bragging, "Oh, look at this! MAGA brought us the first American Pope," and somewhat you get, but then it's a matter of whether Pope is a bit of a. I've seen Peruvians claim him as one of theirs for some reason. He
Yeah,
happened
I
to be
saw
in
that.
Peru for a long while.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the Peruvians have sort of been playing the magic soil theory with him, which is quite entertaining to watch. I don't know how that works, but hey, they sort of claim this Pope Bob. What was his name? Robert something.
Clever.
Yeah.
He is.
Now it's Pope Leo. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's been mixed, and some Catholics have sort of. I mean, I guess Roman Catholic friends of ours have to toe the line, so to speak. So they sort of like, I think some of them cope themselves into thinking the best of this. I mean, if he's from the school of Francis, I mean, on the only thing that I've seen quite interesting is he did in one of his sermons, I think either today or yesterday. I think it was yesterday. He said he stated that our people in our church are the the chosen people of God, which seems like a bit of a dig at the other sort of belief from other Christian sects in America and so on. So I don't know. We'll wait and see what this American Pope is like. But I think on stuff on immigration and stuff, it would be good. But my ultimate thing is that I can see like he will use the Vatican to be a fortification for Team Blue, while MAGA does Team Red stuff, and it's all American politics. Everything's Team Red and Team Blue, which is bad for Europe. I mean, it is bad for Europe. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it's straight up, it's bad for Europe. It's that Europe in this time when America is going into a new Monroe doctrine of like looking inwards, needed something as an anchor to rediscover its identity, and this was a massive kick in the teeth.
Hang on a minute, Mitch. I don't think America is going into a new Monroe Doctrine. I think what America is doing and what they should have done a long time ago is they're reorientating to the Pacific, and specifically against China. And to me, that makes perfect military sense. I don't think they're going into a new Monroe Doctrine. They're just saying to the Europeans, and I think for the Europeans, this could be a good thing. Take care of yourself, boys. Because you know what? Russia is not that big of a threat, really.
I mean,
It's
I don't disagree.
it's
I don't.
containable by Europe if Europe, instead of backing Ukraine with billions and billions of pounds and dollars, and much of the British Armed Forces kit, for example, if instead of doing that, we were to build up our armed forces just a bit, we'd be perfectly safe against Russia, actually. But it's British governments and French governments and German governments just will not behave sensibly.
I don't. I think it's good. It's good that the European powers, aren't dependent on America, and they look after themselves. And I've always sort of agreed on that sort of that level of. I mean, Trump wants to enact that for different reasons, maybe than I do, but I do think at the end of the day, yeah, that's a good thing. But my point on all of this is that the problem is, I believe the Catholic Church acts as a superstructure for the framework of European civilization. I mean, yes, it's the leader of the Roman Catholic faith. It's the the bedrock of the Bishop of Rome and all that sort of stuff. But more importantly, it does represent European civilization, whether you like it or not. That is the representation of it. And I do not believe an American is appropriate. I didn't think a Latin American, the previous one, was appropriate. I think it should be a European. I think, and I don't buy into this belief that the Catholic Church can be this sort of universal, just this universal thing that has no foundation. I mean, technically, the Roman Catholic faith, its origin is the state religion of the Roman Empire. It's the state religion of the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire ceased to exist, but that continued, and then or the Western half. Sorry,
all correct. AI, all correct. Although I would just say I'm not a Catholic, so whatever. Adam, did you have any thoughts on this stuff?
No, I have not. I was hoping for Pizza Baller too. I don't really know enough about the selection. I kind of confer to AM's take that he wasn't the worst. He does seem to be a bit insufferable, like a typical sort of American leftist, sort of insufferable knobber. But
I know there was an African guy who was quite a front runner. There was a
the Congo,
there was a Filipino guy who was quite a front runner. But listen, I'm not a Catholic, and what I know about papal politics, you could write on the back of a postage stamp. So there's no point in me opinioning about this, really.
I mean, seemingly Provost presided over an NGO that in South America, in Peru, to whom most of its work was dedicated to, like, dismantling actual right-wing Christian groups out there. So
that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look, he spent most of his career in South America, as far as I understand. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention, because first of all, Orb was asking what do we think about like the Boers or Afrikaners apparently being given refuge in America, which I'm just thinking the Afrikaners have been there longer than America has been in existence. So
true.
So I'm looking at that going, well, look, optimally, right, you'd have South Africa and Rhodesia back to being, dominated by in case of South Africa, it'd be a bit weird because you've got Afrikaners and Anglos there, so I don't know how that would work. You're more knowledgeable about this than me, but Rhodesia, like, I would want Zimbabwe to become Rhodesia again. You know, like for example,
I'd support both of those things, Mitch. Neither of them is going to happen, but I would support
no,
both of them.
I was just saying to all that I didn't say anything before, so I'm just saying that the fact is, because I mean, I'm of that position where I say if reform don't succeed over here, then I just think of reform as the last chance saloon, really, for this country. That's my thought
Yeah,
process.
yeah.
So,
Don't disagree,
so, if
Mitch. I know
so
Adaman doesn't agree with that, but I think you're largely right. Certainly politically, anyway. But also,
yeah,
and you'll know this, Mitch, because it's part of your interest stuff. Like Putin did that to Afrikaners quite a while ago, actually. Said that,
yeah, but
Afrikaner farmers who want to move to Russia, yeah, you can. So I'm
yeah,
glad that President Trump has also done that, and particularly because there are bits of America which will be climatically fairly similar to parts of South Africa.
like
So yeah, that's good. But on the other hand, I also hope the Afrikaners can survive in their own country in South Africa. Like I support
yeah,
Orania and all this kind of stuff.
yeah, because the main thing that if all the let's say for example half or even all of Afrikaners were to move on to America, after a few generations, they'll just all assimilate into being like Americans speaking English and so on.
For
And the
sure.
Afrikaans language, for example, would just disappear. And I just see it as a great shame if that were to happen. On one hand, it's not up to me or up to Aubrey if the Afrikaners do that. It's just a matter of I just want that culture to disappear. And I think the best way that can happen is if, like, preferably, because I remember that because I shared an article about Nelson Mandela being a massive terrorist, contrary to what most people unfortunately think of him was.
Yeah,
But like,
which I have said on this channel many times over the last 5 or 6 years.
yeah,
Yeah, Nelson Mandela was a self-admitted terrorist who was blowing people to smithereens, including loads of black people. He was not some sort of saint. Sorry, wasn't.
yeah.
He was not.
Yeah, so ideally, I'd say Trump should just tell the Rainbow Nation and just like, let's say, for example, the Zulus get on state, but primarily South Africa goes towards the Afrikaners, especially from Transvaal to the Cape, and we get Rhodesia back. But yeah.
Well, I'd just say that Woodpit put up Cape Independence, and yeah, Cape Independence seems a good idea to me because the white guys could move there and actually become a majority alongside the coloureds, who in South African terminology are mixed race people. Between them, they could become a majority in parts of the Cape. So that's why I think Cape Independence is a good idea. Whether it will happen, well, we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, I'm a big admirer of the Afrikaner people. I lived in South Africa from 85 to 2000. Most of the Afrikaners are bloody good people. Woodpit is talking about Robert Dugan, who is excellent about this. Conscious Caracal also does quite a lot about it. Afri Forum does some stuff on it. So yeah, check all those guys out. But I'm certainly not against President Trump offering political asylum to Afrikaners. But as I say, Putin did this quite some while ago, and good. I would support Tutia Care doing it, but he never will, of course, because Tutia Care hates white people above anyone else, especially straight white men, especially straight white men, and that's not necessarily because he's gay, but
somebody in chat, and I will have to sort of reiterate this. Somebody in chat put just very good point. Let's just say that hypothetically the entire Boer population goes to America as like political refugees or what have you. We know, for example, in America, they don't like in this country, they don't like distinctive white groups, like in like not like the blacks or the Hispanics or anything having their own sort of groups. Whites, you're not allowed to have your own group. You're not allowed to be of your own.
Hang on.
No, hold on.
It's not as true today as it used to be. It's not so true under Trump.
I think it kind of is though, because as soon as the Boers would reach America, they will be assimilated into the mass population, and then their children and grandchildren will be then to be taught to hate themselves, and they'll be worshipping blacks and worshipping, well, who, into the political rigmarole of it all. So in many ways, I think, they should be able to stay in South Africa. They should be able to stay where they are at the moment, because well, yeah, they'll be assimilated into the English population, and they'll suffer the same propaganda here. But what I'm saying is that, they'll be assimilated.
AI, can I ask you, do you really think that America under Trump is worse than Britain under Starmer? I mean, really? Because I
wait.
don't see how you can think that, to be honest.
I think one of the problems is, at least with Britain under Starmer, everybody can see that the country, Starmer number one, hasn't got like the mass popular support, and so anything that he says, patriots in this country, the natives in this country, will kind of just, shrug off, because they know it's not real. And I think the trouble with Trump is he uses his, the mass popular support of white America, let's say, or America, and yeah, I think, depending on what happens. I mean, quite frankly, though, he has demonstrated that he does believe in the race colorblind stuff. I mean, remember his
He's a
inauguration? It
90s
was
Democrat.
my yeah, yeah.
Trump himself is a 90s Democrat. No one I know who is at all serious has ever called him anything else.
Well, yeah. Well, there you go. I mean,
but on the other hand, he's a
that
million times. But on the other hand, he's a million times better than Starmer or Rishi Sunak or so-called, in air quotes, Alexander Johnson. He's a million times better than those guys.
Well, sure, but at the end of the day, they did. I mean, it would be a disaster in this country if, let's say, Starmer had the mass popular support of the, the British people. I mean, then that would be a disaster,
but
because
Starmer is completely anti-British, and I don't think for a minute that Trump is completely anti-American.
Well, no, he's not anti-American, but I think he doesn't view America. He views America as like this sort of collective of this sort of ethnic pot, and he doesn't. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think he is pro-white America as people like to make him out to be. I think he very much views, well, each group can have their own spaces in America.
All right, I'm going to ask other people about this because I'm confused at what you think here, Aya. But I will just say before I do, someone in the chat asked about soap peels, which is an Afrikaans term, and the soap peel Afrikaans term means you have 1 foot in England and 1 foot in South Africa, and your dick is hanging in the sea in between. It has nothing to do with Dutch people in Holland. Anyway, sorry, Mitch, what's your feeling about this?
Basically, yeah, I'm agreeing more with AI. Like Trump, he looks upon America as basically being like an 80s Hollywood version where, all races work together.
Sure.
And to be fair, that's on one hand, it's built upon a mirage. However, it's a lot better than what someone like Kamala Harris would have wanted for America if she won. So it's one of the things where it's like Farage over here. It's like Farage, Dwayne Taylor. I mean, Dwayne Taylor, for example, really over like a week ago or whatever it was, he said, "Oh, well, being British is a state of mind." So that's kind of like the mentality you're working with when it comes to, the populist right or centre right, whatever you want to call them. There are flaws with it, but I mean, of day, it's a step in the right direction. Although there can be a point where you go, okay, in the case of America, you have the blacks, for example. Now, the problem with America is they've had the blacks there for pretty much since like 1620. So there's not an easy solution to that mess. You can't just ship them all back to Africa, like what I think. It's just a position where America just has a really awkward question to ask. Whereas over here, it's a lot more clear cut. The fact that the vast majority of the immigrants we've had have been imported since Tony Blair came into power. If as well as also you got Windrush with Clement Attlee, but yeah, they've not even been here for 100 years. So if we just chose to remigrate the vast majority of them, it wouldn't be conflicting with our national character to do it. Unlike what it'd be like unlike in America, where the question's a lot more complicated on account of said blacks having been there for longer than the country's existence. Because you've got to factor this year is the 250th year of course, like, I mean, next year will be the 250th anniversary of Declaration of Independence. And what I will say, like, as much as I can be anti-American at times, like, I would say, you know, America would be a lot better if it conformed more to Aubrey's vision, where it's like, I think Bob Will said it best, that America was meant to be like a Roman Republic for Anglos. That was the whole point of America. It was meant to be like basically a Roman Republic in the modern era, but for those of Anglo-Celtic stock or Anglo-Saxon stock, whatever nomenclature you want to use. It was never meant to be this melting pot where you have Sicilians and Slavs and Hispanics and blacks just all intermingling like a Brazil 2.0. By any means.
100.
I mean, what it was in the seven. It was in the 70s. So not in relatively recent time. America was 90% white.
Yep. Yep. I saw. I don't know. One of my American friends on X today said exactly that. That it was 90% white in like 1971 or something like that. Adam,
it's 60% now, but or something like that. It's like
I don't think it's even that high, but anyway, I'm not sure. But Adam, what do you think about this?
It's a tough one because it's like I mentioned right at the beginning about this India trade deal, right? You do feel in Britain as if you're being kicked in the teeth approximately like twice a week, or sort of like every 5 days or so. There's some sort of happening from government that just feels like part of a long-standing humiliation ritual, and I suspect that that's a way in which living under Starmer is significantly worse than living under Trump. But if you think about it in terms of like day-to-day governance and the sort of general melee of like Western shit-lib regime, it kind of seems very similar. I can't think of that many ways in which it's different other than the one I just mentioned. And Aubrey in chat says, you condemn us, but our ancestors are the same. Well, I mean, I don't want to condemn Americans generally. We are sort of Anglos ultimately.
Yeah, it's kind of like we committed different sins. Like in America, basically brought over loads of slaves, and then when they abolished it, Abraham Lincoln wanted to ship them all back to Africa, but he died before he could action that plan. And then successive presidents just delete on the question rather than solve it outright. Right? So you just have a position where we've had these people for like 400 years, and we don't know what to do with them. And it's just an awkward question that can't easily be answered. Whereas over here, it's a matter of the vast majority of migrants have only come around here in not the last 30 years. So we it's not as massive. But I mean, then again, the blacks only make about 13% of the population. But I'm just thinking, I don't know how, as an American, you'd solve that problem. Whereas over here, as I said, you can just deport most of migrants that have come over here, and it wouldn't change anything about the national character or anything. Whereas with America, it's like, you get, the blacks have been a part of the culture for unfortunately, I don't know how. Perhaps that might change in my lifetime. But I just think with the
But it's only, but Mitch, it is only about 13% of the population. Like the problem in the US is not really US blacks. I mean, all right, there is a problem there, certainly in terms of violent crime and all that stuff. But the demographic problem in America is not particularly American blacks. It's assorted.
Hispanics.
Yeah,
You got,
yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like,
And
I've said
Indians.
it all. Yeah,
And these days, Indians. But I mean, Indians. And to some degree, Pakistanis is true in America, it's true in Britain, it's true in Australia, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean Georgia in the south, like in Atlanta, I know that there has been a upswing of Indians, and it's funny because I saw one of our American accounts where there's like this meme of like the NPC meme, but like this Indian woman, and she's like talking about the legacy of like the Sherman and the US Civil War and everything, and it's just like this NPC of this Indian woman wearing this garments and everything, and it's sort of like they people who embed themselves in the culture that they have like no ties with, and I think this is the problem that America's going to face, probably more so than us, because at least we can. I think the benefit of England is that the English people, same with the Scots and Irish and such, are able to say, and who we are as a people, that this is our land, such and so on and that forth. I think with America though, there has to be that connection, and I think it's difficult because it is like it has been turned into a Brazilian style melting pot, with their own little areas.
It's almost turned to that AI. I'd say Trump this time, and whoever succeeds him, if they can win the next election, this is the chance America has to try and turn that around. And I think that's why most of my American friends, the Americans who I like, are full-on Trump supporters, because this is their one chance to try and turn that around. If they don't succeed, they're going to be on a downward spiral.
I will say that America have a main Hispanic problem. I mean, I think I said to Orbit, like, if America were just carpet bomb Mexico, I'd actually be on side with that, because let's face it, I mean, you often see Hispanics often posting about how, then Mexico was taking over Texas, or Mexico was taking over California. I mean, see his revenge for like 1848 when President Polk.
And how often, Mitch, do we see immigrants in Britain saying that's why they're taking over all the towns in the Midlands, is because once upon a time we ran India or Pakistan, as it may now be, or whatever. How often do we see exactly the same bollocks?
Okay, the difference is with America, they're a new world civilization, so they've got the whole our world based. The whole civilization is built on liberalism from like the Declaration of Independence. Plus, they do have that birthright citizenship. Now, Trump is a bit of a legal quandary though, because he put an executive order, but I don't think that's how it works. Whereas over here, it's England was built upon the principle of it being a homeland for Anglo-Saxons.
But
Mitch,
we are not even in England. We are not even allowed to be proud of the British Empire. We have to pretend it's some sort of Soviet or Nazi empire, which it never was.
Duke, my point is, we have a lot more wiggle room to be explicitly ethno-nationalist, whereas in America, it's a bit less clear-cut on account of how the country started out as.
Being a lot more. There's some truth in that, Mitch.
We can. I mean, the thing though is, we can be proud of all that. It just means the Westminster and alien people in towns and such. So like where Mitch is won't be, but that doesn't really care, because at the end of the day, and this is something, I guess this is one thing that's the only positive thing is the like the Pakistani and the Indian subcontinent communities in the UK tend to self-segregate. I mean, we don't really. There is no. I mean, there is literally hardly any integration in any significant sense.
There
I mean,
isn't
you
anywhere AI. I've got to
no,
tell you, mate. Yeah.
it's all it's not like the Spanish and the natives in like in Central America.
But AI, I've got to say to you, like, and I've got to defend the Americans a little bit here. Is that in Britain you can be that mother who got what nearly 3 years, was it 3 or 3.5 years in prison for a tweet?
What are the
The white woman, yeah, the white woman who got 3.5 years in prison for a tweet.
I mean,
many others as well.
I mean, I give it time in America.
Hang on,
Give
mate.
it
That doesn't
time in
happen in
America.
America. It can't happen
well,
in America because
well,
America has some sort of free speech at least. Lucy
Well,
Connolly, Davey, thank you.
Give it
Lucy
time,
Connolly.
because I've seen in Texas, for example, there have been ramping up through like the local the local state senate or legislating like Pakistan Day celebrations and things like that. That's what I've seen on the local level.
But you do understand, and I'm sure you do because you're an intelligent bloke, that America has various amendments to their constitution which kind of make hate speech just about impossible in America. Whereas in Britain, it's an everyday occurrence.
I mean, these guys are quite, scheming, conniving individials. I'm sure
Yeah,
they'll find a way
listen,
to
I don't like
America.
I don't like any of these people. All right, I don't. I detest. There's no way Lucy Connolly should be in jail. There's no way that poor bugger from the Southport protest should have killed himself in prison. That shouldn't have happened. But you know what? In America, none of those people could have been sent to prison because they've got free speech, which we do not have in Britain.
Whoa, hang on a minute. Didn't Don the Pleb get arrested?
Yeah, but it was nothing to do with what he said. It was where he was.
I don't know. That still doesn't seem.
Listen, Adamant, I am not, of course, pretending that America is perfect. Of course it's not. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in terms of stuff that you or I or AI or Mitch or anybody else might say online on X, on YouTube, wherever. In America, you can't go to jail for that, basically. You can't. Whereas in Britain, yes, you absolutely can.
I don't really see, because that doesn't really have anything to do with Starmer versus Trump, though.
I mean, I would say on that point, there are examples where America. I mean, it depends how you justify it. Now, yes, in this country, the problem that you got is Starmer locked up people for not, like, literally people didn't, like, there was a woman who was locked up for just filming a riot. She wasn't involved with it. She wasn't involved in. She was just locked up. She was locked up, arrested and charged for just filming the thing. I agree that is an overreach. That is ridiculous, and all that. But at the same time, again in America, and this is something argument I had with the libertarians, is like back in the day when you had the BLM stuff, people who spoke out against BLM, lost their jobs. They were targeted by mobs, and it wasn't just like high profile. It was even on like people on the local level. There were targetings and what have you. And so there are ways the state can punish somebody to, and justify it. And I do think that Don the Pleb, actually, the example that Atman just brought up, actually, is quite a good example, because they did use like lawfare in a similar way, very similar to the riots in
All right, all right, all right.
last year.
Let's agree with you for a minute, AI. But what actually happened is President Trump got elected. He pardoned all of the January 6 people as soon as he came in, which meant that Don the Pleb's case was immediately, that was the end of it. They couldn't proceed with it. We got Sir Keir Starmer, who locks up mothers and anyone who is basically a Anglo-Celtic white supporter. And you can be locked up for almost nothing in Britain, and you will not get a fair trial, and you will get a very long time in prison relative to a Pakistani, for example, who might be, I don't know, let's say raping English schoolgirls. Relatively, they'll get next to nothing under two-tier care.
I mean, that's been going on for years, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, this is as far as
someone in chat said.
Hang on, Herman. This is not a competition, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not really concerned.
It always every time we discuss this, it always turns into a competition. We always have the chest-beating American nationalist rhetoric of, "Oh, look, your country's cooked. Look at us, we're great." And I have to say, Ruby Ridge, Waco. I mean, okay, sure, you don't lock them up, but your government fucking kills half the people who.
Mate, and I totally agree with you.
Tomb of Arminius in the chat said UK and Australia are further ahead on this. This is
which we are.
Yeah, we're behind on demographics, and we're kind of ahead on the
yes, absolutely right.
But
Adam,
both...
in demographic terms, we're a bit better off. Yes, we are, but not in terms of free speech terms at all.
I will say, like, because I'm seeing like people quite, like, for example, Steve mentioned Bill of Rights. We do technically have stuff like Bill of Rights, Magna Carta, which anyone can read. But the fact of the matter is, in America, someone like Trump comes along, he signs executive orders, but all it takes is one judge to start a federal claim against him, and it just causes a legal quandary that stretches on for bloody years, and it hamstrings a lot what Trump does.
Yeah.
Whereas over here,
absolutely.
Whereas if you had, I was going to say, whereas over here, as Aaron Hook will say, we have an unwritten constitution. So yes, it's not clearly put down. However, in a single term of office, we can get a lot more done in sort of 5 years than what Trump can in 4 years because of the way it works differently. Yes, it means
in theory, Mitch, in theory.
Well, I mean, so for example, you have the Supreme Court over here. You can just get rid of that, whereas in America you can't. Like it's wrapped up in there. Whereas over here, it's a Blair
yeah. Okay.
For example, or let's say for example, you're Farage talking about Ministry of Deportations. Now he's doing that because the Home Office is full of these people who just rubber stamp every asylum application. And you can't just easily, because of the way civil service rules work, you can't easily just turf out those people straight away. So you have to create a separate department that takes care of that particular jurisdiction to get rid of the people. It's not the best solution, but I think it's a matter of, well, you know.
See, I agree with Davey 1602. Return power to the House of Lords. Trouble is, and absolutely, the British Supreme Court is a Tony Blair bullshit thing that should just be removed, for sure. But to return power to the House of Lords, you've got to change the House of Lords. You've got to do what the Liberal Party did in the early 20th century and say, look, we'll make as many right-wing laws as we need to make to make this work. Will reform do that? Because the so-called,
I think reform might, but it's not about the laws, is it?
Never will. Sorry, Adam.
Well, I was just going to say, I think reform will. They're already talking about that, but the problem is they're just going to write the laws, aren't they? They're not going to. I mean, this is like the difference between, since we're talking about Trump, this is like the difference between like Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0, right? Is that Trump 1.0 couldn't get anything done because he was viewing politics through this old paradigm where it was about like the law, what was written in document.
Yeah.
And he thought he could just reform this and things would magically get fixed. Trump 2.0, the extent to which he might do some good is going to be that he's going to actually root out these people, the people that interpret the laws to their benefit. Oh, hang on, my computer's spazzing out.
I mean,
And
I'm just
yeah, go
going
on.
to. So I'm just going to address. I'm not saying anyone on this in this chat ever espouses like anti-British stuff, but what I'm seeing is like the big MAGA influencer accounts, in the past. You know, people like Charlie Kirk and everything. That's my sort of like example. I mean, there's a long list of examples that you can find. That's my examples of like the sort of the worst aspect, what people would call MAGA slop accounts, right? They're the worst examples of it. And yes, some of them aren't American. People like Ian Chung-Lee, they're not American.
So I
which
don't
is all-
follow those guys.
No,
Yeah.
no.
I
Well, yeah,
don't
but
follow those
I
guys.
I don't follow them. But every time I sign into that damn site, they're always there because I mean they're pushed by
have you blocked them?
algorithm.
Because I've blocked
But even
loads of
JD Vance
accounts.
said this stuff though.
He said
Yeah, I
some
mean,
of it. Yeah, he did say some of it, but he also said good stuff like, you know what, Britain
It
should
doesn't.
have free
I mean,
speech, which it should.
I can't really block. I can't block Elon Musk because no matter what, it's always somewhat
Yeah,
filters through. But
I don't know, guys. Look, I do think a lot of this British nationalist, American nationalist arguing is fucking pointless, to be honest. I do. And I don't support it from either side, incidentally. I don't support it when Americans do it either. And I've called Americans out about this.
Like
But
the amount of times that you get like people saying like even regular people on X or anywhere about how Islamization, you've lost all your cities, this is what happens when you gave up your guns, blah 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 blah. And it's like you can see, like, we used to watch these programs. There used to be these programs on the BBC. They used to love making these shows about like how long would it take for like the world to be rewilded after like humans died out. And they would have these weird simulations where they would show like, the Eiffel Tower with like trees roots growing through it and stuff like that. You can see this in practice because you can look at Detroit. Right, there's a section
absolutely.
people can actually go on Google Maps and they can search. This will be good for like non-Americans. You can search, I think it's called the Pope Francis Center. They might have changed the name now, actually, I'm not sure. But it's in a section of Detroit where it was clearly previously suburbs. But because of the urban renewal programs where they essentially like chased the sort of white Anglo-Americans out of these places and they filled them with flats. And you had like the mass white flight.
Yeah, there's block after block of either houses that have almost fallen down or have just been demolished. Yes, absolutely.
Like there's a whole section there where it actually looks like a park with just roads running through it. But it
there are places you could find wolves in Chicago for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's a tragedy, and it's not to hate on Americans. It's just the case that we're kind of both up shit creek. And they should a lot of those people that are saying that stuff kind of need to look a bit more within. And
it feels a bit deluded when they go off on it. It feels quite delusional, that they're sort of not in touch with reality. I mean, yeah, both our situations are bad. Both of them maybe wanted to a degree or another, but I hate to say, but I would not be surprised at this moment in time in America, for example, in certain places, there are probably grooming gangs forming.
Well, we know there are in England, so and they're not forming.
It's still going on.
They've been there for decades in England. So look, this is my point. I don't see the point of this war of words that we sometimes get. And actually, to be honest, like my American friends never say this, right? No. They don't. I hear some Americans saying this, but they're not the people I like. We're both in a bad position, as you rightly said, AI, and as Mitch and Adamant said, we're both in a far from good position. Is it one side or the other's fault more than anything else? I don't know, mate, to be honest. I don't. All I know is we're all in the shit to some degree. And if I could swap Starmer for Trump, I would do it in a nanosecond. Right now, in a nanosecond, I would. Because Starmer actually hates white Anglo-Celtic people. He really does. Whereas Trump, I think, is at least not anti traditional Americans. He's not. Now, you guys can disagree with that if you want, but I don't think I would. I would say you are correct.
Well, again, the trouble that the people that surround himself, he surrounds himself with, they like America, but they, at the same time, they are still in the camp for the outsider.
Some of them, not all of them, mate. Not all
I mean,
of
but
them.
that is, I mean, if we're doing a proper critique of the American right here, the critique I will have for the American right here is while they still worship that country in the Middle East, they will never be their true self.
Yep. Totally. I get it.
I will
but
say,
you are
Trump
talking
has,
about a fair. Hang on a minute, Mitch. You are talking, when you're talking about Israel, you're talking about very high up people in the American deep state. All right, you're not talking about average Americans, really.
I will say, Trump has fallen in with Netanyahu by the looks of it. Like, Hegseth apparently cancelled the trip to Israel, so it looks like Trump has. I don't know if it's just personal beef with Netanyahu himself, but it looks like the American admin isn't as big on the Israel worship as it were back in the first term. I will also say, the thing is about you have the American. Well, I mean, it's mainly boomer evangelicals who do it, and they're a dying cohort.
Sure.
Using the Zoomer evangelicals, however, completely different. They're a lot more antis, or at least they're at least skeptical of it. So the thing is, like Israel, they've only got a lot of boomers to work with in America. With the Zoomers on the right, not so much.
Mitch, you might have noticed, like, I don't know, a couple of days ago, I answered a tweet on X where this woman said, if push came to shove, would you support the Muslims or the Jews in Britain? And my reply was, I only ever support the Anglo-Celtic people in Britain, and especially when push comes to shove. It's not like we don't have the same issue in Britain to some degree. It's not as bad as America, but we do have it.
But that is the mindset. I mean, that for me is the ultimate mindset, because even in that sort of hypothetical scenario, and this is where you go into the realms of Tommy Robinson and that sort of fringe. It's treated as like this sports team that you have to. Well, if you're to be opposed to Muslims, you have to be on like the pro-Israel side, and it's like no, you have to be on the side of your own people. I mean, that's just it's kind of like it should be basic knowledge, and it's so frustrating to see people not see it. It's I'm gonna have to head off now anyhow, but thanks for having me on.
Many thanks for joining us, AI. You're always most welcome, mate. Listen, we don't always agree on everything, but this would be a very boring stream if we all agreed. So, but yeah, look, I just think this Anglo-American nationalist having a go at each other is pretty fucking pointless. We got bigger enemies, boys. We really do have. Both of us. Both groups of people have bigger enemies. That's my point.
All right, go well, everybody. I'll see you next time.
AI, before you go, please plug your channel.
Oh yeah, AI Homelander, and check out my stream yesterday on the 120 Days of Sodom by Marquis de Sade. I do a critical review and a very, very critical breakdown of it. And that was like a part one. I'm not sure if I'm going to do another part part to it, but I might do. I might sort of just delve a bit deeper, see if there's any. I'm going to do some reading ahead in my own time, and just see if I can maybe find a section that I can abstract more, like sort of parts of it that I can sort of talk about in a bit more detail.
Do go and subscribe to AI's channel. It's AI Shire Homelander, and there'll be a link to his channel in a pinned comment under the stream later on. AI, thank you very much for joining
Yeah.
us this
Oh,
evening.
don't worry, Aubrey. I'm not depressed. I'm just tired. I'm just tired. It's all right. I'm not
Yeah, it's
depressed.
it's
I'm
getting pretty late in UK now,
Yeah, I'm just
Aubrey,
tired.
so
I've had quite an event. I've been out and about today, and I did like an audit of my like personal audit of the Turkish barbers in town. So I was sort of going around there, and I'm a bit depressed from that, but yeah.
thanks for coming on, AI. And like I said, people go and check out AI's channel. It's very good. He's got some great stuff on the British Empire, which I have occasionally contributed to. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, go well, man. Mitch, Adaman, any final thoughts? We've been getting on for 2.5 hours now, so
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, Gavin Bobby, just before we went on and did a stream, put up a tweet saying that sadly his case against the Glen pub in Leicester being turned into a mosque failed.
that's a shame.
Yeah, but people should also go and check out his tweet and support his other projects. He's been putting up fundraisers to try and fight these things. So
He does great work in stopping people opening mosques where people don't want them. So yeah, Gavin Bobby, really good guy. Like him a lot.
Yeah.
Follow him on X and on YouTube.
Yeah, as for me, I just hope like on the topic of America. I mean, I don't think any of us would have any problems if America were to go back to being run by wasps. And I see some American nationalists who often, they think of Trump as being like their Caesar. And well, if you look at Caesar, you think, okay, Caesar did a lot of work, but his work was ultimately completed by Octavian. So, I suppose if you want to get knee deep in the law, I suppose you could say if you're an American nationalist, you're hoping that you have Trump who does some of the work, and then you have hope that someone like Barron later on completes the work if you're gonna if one were to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, I think America, if it goes down back to being the wasp homeland they used to be, rather than like the melting pot it is currently, then America will be much better. Like it'd be firmly anchored in its Anglo-Saxon heritage and so on, as opposed to being what it is currently, where it's just a glorified shopping centre masquerading as a country.
Yep, don't disagree with any of that, mate. All right, guys. Adam, anything you'd like to plug, mate?
No, not from me.
All right. Mitch, anything you'd like to plug?
No, not from me.
All right. Before we close, I need to check our entropy. And yeah, thank you very much, Gerin, for USD $5. And he just says hello. Thank you for that, Kieran. Support is always welcome on the channel. I spend quite a lot of money keeping this channel going today. A fair bit over $100 a month. So support is always welcome. But yeah, I thought we had an interesting chat. I mean, maybe it wasn't quite as divided into sections as always, but yeah. I would just say this. My thing with the British-American rivalry is we're not really each other's enemies as far as I'm concerned. Like America can go well and Britain can go well, and they're not mutually exclusive, in my humble opinion.
I'm not fully sure. I think at the end of the day, America first. It's like just in Canada, right? They voted the Liberal Party because Trump and ends up antagonising the entire country. Whereas
And what
Trump could have
a
just
con that what a con that was, Mitch. The bloke they voted for, Carney, was the head of the Bank of England when they got rid of Liz Truss.
yeah, and he was anti-Brexit, so he's not like a
He's
guy
a
our way.
scumbag. He's a scumbag, and he's
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
not pro-Canadian.
yeah. But the fact is that Trump bears some part of the blame for this because at the end of the day, like he ends up attacking. Like he could have just gone, "I hate Justin Trudeau," which the vast majority of Canadians at that point were
Yes,
agreeing with.
I
So
would have
he should,
agreed with that. Yes.
yeah, he should have just said Trudeau, and at a push, perhaps he can say, "I don't like the Liberal Party," but he
Yes,
should never have said
absolutely.
like he should never have said that stuff about Canada being the 51st state or whatever. Like that was just a bridge too far, to say the least. But yeah, you know, I don't know about Britain and America not being at odds, and I just say, well, first of all, America, for example, their empire has to include having a country like Canada and Australia as part of their sphere of influence, whereas someone like me, I want Kansas. Like I want there to be,
Yeah,
something
I'm the
approaching
same,
more than
Mitch. Mitch, I'm the same. But I'm also not against being an ally of the Americans, providing the Americans are not dominating everything. You know.
Yeah, but that's a problem. Like they will naturally want to dominate. Even like a lot of the MAGA right, they will like the idea of America being the empire that dominates over us, but over
Oh, sure,
others. That's just
sure, sure,
natural.
sure.
It's like, for
I-
example, it's like for example myself, right? I can be, let's say, I can work Afrikaners at times, but I'm not going to mask my intent, or I can have some good regard for the Irish, but I'm not going to mask my intentions in saying, well, look, ultimately, I want the Irish to be brought back into the Union as they were like 200
Yeah,
years
no,
ago, for
look,
example.
I don't disagree with anything you say there, Mitch. But it's just like if you got Kanzuk, for example, but Kanzuk only makes any sense if you have based right-wing governments in Britain, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. But if you had that, and all of a sudden the Kanzuk Navy would easily be the second most powerful navy, um, or certainly it would rival the Chinese in size. Then the Americans would have to treat those countries with a good deal of respect because without them, they wouldn't bloody win. Do you see? That's my point. Is in the situation we are now, where Britain, in terms of military power, is quite small. Like Britain is a small military power today, even relative to say 1982 at the time of the Falklands War. Britain was 3 times more powerful then than we are now in military terms.
I,
And so
I,
today, Britain is such a tiny military power that why the fuck should the Americans give a shit about what we think? Really?
well, I mean, okay, so some American, like, there's an argument to be said about Americans think of us. Like, it's like Julius Caesar and other Romans like him, they would consider Greece to be like sort of an intellectual equal. So many Americans may feel like they're the Romans and may look upon us as like the Greeks. So many Americans see us as like their forefathers in a sense. That's what we look upon us
Yeah,
as. Like
yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah. I always thought that was a bullshit story and it was cope from the Brits in the 1940s, but all right, okay.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there's an element of truth to it, but at the end of the day, well, there's far more American. Well, there's plenty of Americans who either don't care about it or are hostile towards like the Irish diaspora over there, like the Kennedy family and so on. Like so that's,
Sure, sure,
but
sure, sure.
don't get. So all I'm saying is don't get carried away with it. Like Trump is very Anglophile, so that's one thing to think about there. Because his mother was Scottish, I believe, Isle of
Yes, he
Lewis.
was. Yeah, she was. Yeah.
So that's one thing. Like there's a kernel of truth to it, but there's also not a kernel of truth to it.
Yeah. I just think that what Britain needs to do is kind of like on the one hand we need to say, look, all right, you know what? We're our own thing. Let's do our own thing, which we have not done since World War II, really. And on the other hand, we need to turn around and say, do you know what? Sometimes British wants and needs and world positions will align with America, and sometimes they won't. And we should be more independent, but we can only be more independent if the British government will say, okay, we can't actually get by on a navy with 16 fucking major surface escorts. You know, we just
I do
can't.
need to get off.
And that's why that to some degree is why the Americans think the Brits are a fucking joke, because we have no military force anymore. And yet you get stupid CUNTs like Starmer saying to Putin, oh, we're going to hold you to account, when the fucking Russians could destroy every major naval base and air force base and army base in Britain in about 3 days. And we have no defense against it at all, except
Yeah,
the
they're not going to, though.
Americans.
We
I
don't.
don't
Yeah, but they're
think
not going to, though.
I don't think he will either, Atman. But you know what? I don't believe in relying on other countries' goodwill.
Sure, but I mean, the British government, British government just gets away with this continually because we're essentially a nation without a natural predator in our current environment.
Well,
But,
really, what we are is a nation that depends on an American umbrella that we don't want to admit.
Well, I mean, we don't depend on it because, yeah.
Well,
whatever.
we wouldn't survive without it.
We would, because we don't have any threats at the moment. I mean,
if China decided to do something to Britain, we would be able to fight them.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, China. Well, so you say, but at the moment,
I mean,
China's trying to become a world power.
I mean, they might do something to Australia, but it's not going to do anything to Europe for decades, if ever. Bearing in mind its own demographic.
No.
We've been over this discussion many times before.
Yeah. In naval terms, that is
America is not defending us. We're just paying America for our own occupation. That's all that is. I mean, America is a state.
Well, look, you might be right or I might be right on this, but do you know what? The end result is the same thing. The end result is the same thing. Like the British Armed Forces can't defend Britain. They just can't. On their own, they would be over. Well, from anybody, basically. I mean, we might be able to defend ourselves from the French, I think, just about.
Yeah, but we're never going to have to be in that situation at the current time frame.
Well, let's hope so. Eh? If the EU turned against Britain, Britain couldn't defend itself against the EU. Not a chance. Not a chance.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen.
Well, you say that, Ammon, but how do you? Well, yeah, right now, probably. But we can't defend ourselves against the EU as a body. We can't defend ourselves against Russia. We can't defend ourselves against China. And I'm sorry, if you want to be an independent nation in the world, you at least have to be able to defend yourself against these people. I'm not saying we need to be able to attack them, but we need to defend ourselves against these people. And we simply can't because we don't spend enough money on it and we don't recruit enough people, which is also
but I don't
partly
think that's
not
why we're
spending enough
considered
money
a
on
laughing
it.
stock in the world.
Oh, well, I mean, that's also because, British values. What are British values? Well, Zia Yusuf is British values, which is bullshit. He's not. He's a Sri Lankan Muslim.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, demographic change is a significantly larger part of why we're considered a laughing stock and why we've lost all our soft power.
Well, if soft power, I think soft power is to a large degree bullshit, but I think soft power comes from hard power. But the point is, if you didn't have the likes of Zia Yusuf, I think you'd end up with quite stronger British Armed Forces, for example. I really do, because no Sri Lankan or Indian or Muslim or any other immigrant into Britain gives a shit about our armed forces. And the vast, vast majority of them never join them either. My point is, if you want soft power, if you want people to take you seriously, then you have to have a certain amount of military strength, which, say, in 1939, Britain still had. actually, just about, in naval terms, not in the army, but in naval terms we did. But now we have nothing. The British Army is like, the British Armed Forces, the Royal Navy, the British Army, and the Royal Air Force are about a third as strong as they were in 1982 today. And
Yeah,
other
but that's not
countries
why.
are much more powerful than they were then.
But the thing is, whether you think the army is underpowered or not, that's not why America's here. Like, bearing in mind,
Well, it's
some of
not
our
it's not the army. I mean, the army is the least important of the British Armed Forces. But yeah, all right.
whatever. Either way, the thing is that like one of our biggest defense NGOs that actually constantly advocates for defense cuts in defense spending is largely funded by the US State Department.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
So
Doesn't surprise
it's
me
like,
at all.
you know, America doesn't really, prior to Trump, no American administration at least in the last 20 years, has advocated for a stronger military presence from any European country, because
don't disagree.
they don't want us to be a rival player.
Well, I don't think we're anywhere near being a rival power or a rival player now. We're just not. Like, we can't even control the English Channel.
No, because of what I just said.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong, Armin, but you see, I'm arguing for the same thing that you're saying, but from a different point of view. Like, I don't like the fact that we do what the Americans tell us, but the way to stop doing what the Americans tell us is to make our military stuff a bit stronger. That would really help.
They won't leave just because we have a stronger armed forces.
I don't necessarily think they need to totally leave, but they're going to withdraw to a large degree anyway. This is what's happening.
No,
at the
because the
moment
problem is your logic is presupposed on the idea that we need them here, and it doesn't matter whether we need them here or not. They want to be here. Yes, it is.
No. I don't know where you get this from, Adam. I don't think we need any American military bases in Britain. Not one.
But you are advocating that we need them to defend us.
At the moment, yeah.
But from who?
From anybody else who could possibly attack us, be it Russia, the EU, China, you name it.
But none of them are a threat to us. They're just not.
That is not. It's not the way it works in terms of like military threats, Adam, and it just isn't. I'm sorry. If you want to be independent,
we've had this discussion a million times. Let's call it a day. I want to go to bed.
All right. If you want to be independent, you have to be able to stand up to those threats. If you can't, then what's the government going to do? They're going to have American military bases all over the Europe, all over the UK.
They're going to do that anyway.
No.
Yes, they are.
Why?
Because the military bases are a form of they're a form of conquest.
I think you and I are fundamentally looking at this a different way. America wants to mostly withdraw their military from Europe. They mostly want to now.
Under the Trump
Americans,
but not prior to that.
Yeah, but Trump wants to, and so will successors of Trump. They want to.
I don't know. It depends.
It's not even that they want to; they have to, because they don't have enough military force to confront China in the Pacific unless they do. This is one of the things that's going on at the moment, and it's one of the things that's going on in the background with the Russia-Ukraine war, is that basically the Americans want to withdraw probably about 2/3 of their forces from Europe, which will make them the smallest they've ever been since 1945. They really want to get rid of most of their forces out of Europe, and that not to help us, to help the Americans. And we should say, yeah, that's great. But in order for us to support that, and the reason that people like Starmer don't, is because that would mean we'd have to spend more money, and they don't want to do that.
But people have been saying this to me my whole life, and it's never happened.
It's happening now, Adam.
That America
Trust me,
was going to
it
pivot
is.
to the Pacific. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't believe it
yeah,
will.
it's happening now.
I believe
This is
American
part
forces might reduce in Europe, but they're not gonna withdraw entirely, and they're not gonna
Oh no,
want
no, no, no!
Europe
Look, I'm not.
to
they're not-
rearm
I don't
or
think they're going to.
reindustrialize. Bearing in mind that the
I don't think
Ukraine
Europe will
war,
reindustrialize.
bearing in mind that the Ukraine war was largely used as a way for America to just kick European industries in the nuts for
Totally
for the
agree.
last couple of years.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I mean that was
I mean,
what
that's
it
not
was used
something you
for.
do if you're planning on pivoting and
No,
having Europe
diff-
sort of rearm.
All right. I can only argue this so much at the moment. I probably need to start writing Substacks or something. But the point is, under Trump, and I hope Trump's successors, America realizes it absolutely must pivot to the Pacific. It must. It's got no choice. Because if it doesn't, it will be overmatched by China there. And it can't keep the same forces in Europe if it's going to do that. Now, I am not suggesting for a minute that every single American is going to leave Europe, although that might be a good thing if they did. But I don't think that will happen. I think what will happen is it will be reduced to about a quarter of what it is now, which is not much at all. It really isn't very much. And the European governments, the Germans, the Brits, the French, they detest that idea because that would mean we will basically have to double our defense spending in order not to be vulnerable to other people. And it's the truth. And I mean, you can turn around and say if you like, then no one's a threat to us right now. Right, that will change. That can change in like a month.
It won't change in a month. It may change in like 3 decades.
No, absolutely not.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I totally
China
disagree
is a
with.
demographic disaster. Like
All right.
it's not going to be reaching the sort of hyperpower status that it claims it will any time
All right.
soon.
Well, we'll have to agree to
Russia's
disagree
taken
on
as
that.
long as it had to take like a small section of Ukraine. It's not marching on the gates of Berlin like all the shitbags
No,
told me it would.
absolutely. No, Russia is not a threat at the moment. But you need to understand there is a difference between capturing territory on the ground and doing a massive missile and airstrike on a country. There is a difference between those two things.
It doesn't matter though, because the idea that America's like defending Europe from no one out of the goodness of its heart is obviously not true.
That's not what I'm saying, Alan. You totally don't get where I'm coming from. That's
Look, I'm going to bed. It's gone midnight.
All
I
right,
need
man.
to get up in the
All
morning.
right, all right. Anyway, thank you for coming on, Alan. You're always most welcome on these streams.
Yeah.
But I just think we were talking past each other there because I wasn't suggesting America was doing anything for other people at all. But anyway, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it another time when it's less late. Go on, mate, and thank you very much for joining us.
You too.
Guys, I'm going to try and play us out of a tune, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah. Good night, all.
Go on. Let's see if this works. You never know, right? We'll try it. Okay, I think that mostly played okay. And that was, of course, Highland Laddie, which is the quick march of the 42nd Highlanders, the Black Watch. Very, very, very fine Scottish Highland Regiment. Thank you very much to my guests this evening, Adaman, Mitch, and AI. We don't always agree, but we always have interesting discussions. Go well, people. Don't let the bastards grind you down. And do remember, we'll be back on Wednesday for our next historical Splendid Isolation stream. So we'll see you then. Go well, guys. See you